Hello, welcome back to Womb Wellness Wednesdays. This is the third in my series, and I'm going to be talking about period care. Period care is what choices you are making while you are bleeding. It's a very challenging topic, and ever since being introduced to steaming and the whole protocol of taking care of my womb and my pelvic bowl, it may be the most challenging thing for me to wrap my head around. And so I presume that other people who grew up in this society, in this culture, being inundated and being habituated into the way we approach our periods, I presume that a lot of other people might struggle with it as well. So I'm going to do this in two parts. This part two is going to be more in depth about what steps you can take to properly take care of yourself during your period in order to really get good results while you're steaming. And this first part is going to be facing the challenge of the mindset that it might take to get there. Just so you're not lost as to why I am saying that period care is challenging, let me just briefly tell you what it involves. First, and most importantly, it involves resting during your period. So not only getting adequate rest as in sleeping overnight, but doing less overall. So that is the primary piece to period care, especially if you're dealing with specific reproductive organ issues. And then the second one is no plugs. Plugs meaning anything that's going to plug up the vaginal canal, like tampons. The other things, keeping your abdomen warm, proper hydration, and nutrition, those are things less challenging. But for me, when I heard those first two, I really went into resistance mode. And I thought, there is no way I'm going to go through my period not using tampons. And then what am I going to do? Not go to work? So these are things I'll talk about a little bit more in the next video, but I just wanted to put it out there so you understand why I'm talking about what I'm talking about right now. Because again, we have normalized this idea of what it looks like to be equal in the world, the greater society that we live in. In that greater society, the terms of success were not created by women. And yet, in order to function in the society in an equal manner and to claim that success, we have to play by those rules. And so, back in the 50s, and even before that, but mainly the 50s and the 60s and then into the 70s, you had the rise of feminism. You had incredible women fighting the fight to say, we are equal, and getting out there into the workforce. And unfortunately, what equal meant and still means is that we play by your rules. We follow a sun cycle. We go to work every single day, even though our physical bodies follow a moon cycle. If you haven't yet watched the video that I made prior to this one, which is about a couple of stories that I extracted from books that I've read that have impacted the way that I think about my moon cycle and my bleeding, my period. One book was Her Blood is Gold, and the other is The Woman in the Shaman's Body. Please watch the other video. It kind of sets the stage for how I'm addressing this challenge. Anyway, so back in the 50s, you had these women who were fighting the fight. And science was also working very hard, actually, to, in some ways, perhaps not on purpose, but inadvertently was supporting this fight. And we ended up with this trifecta for women to be able to function during their periods. And that was birth control pills, which actually stop your period. You might think you're getting your period during those off days, but you're not. It's not an actual period. You haven't ovulated. So you have birth control pills, which allowed women to basically not have a period and just get out there in the world. You had tampons, which now allowed you not to feel like you were just constantly bleeding. You put in a tampon. This was great for people who are professional athletes or just people who wanted to get out and do athletics during their period. Swimmers, I mean, really all of it. So wearing tampons. And then the third was, in more recent years, actually for me, painkillers like Advil. When I was growing up, we had Pamprin and Midol, I think it was, and those didn't even touch my cramps. So you get rid of the pain and you get rid of sort of this having to deal with the blood so much by using tampons and or birth control. And suddenly women have this incredible ability to get out there and prove themselves in a way that they couldn't before. They're no longer the weak woman who has to stay home during their period and all of the associated stereotypes that went along with that. And I'm going to interrupt myself for a minute here just to say that I will be talking about male, female, men, and women, and it's a huge generalization. I know that. Someone in a female body might actually love living in a way that we've typically stereotyped as a masculine way of walking in the world, and vice versa. Please just know that for ease of talking about this whole topic, I am going to make these generalizations, but I know that they don't apply to everybody. So back to the 60s, 70s, and beyond, we were liberated. That was the liberation movement, the revolution for female rising. And it's been a long fight. And the journey is to equality, which we're still not viewed as equal. You know that, right? So do we keep fighting? Do we keep living the same way, fighting, following rules that aren't rules that we made? Because personally, I want to shift that paradigm. And so it's been coming up in my consciousness that maybe part of shifting the paradigm means I need to shift my own paradigm about who I am in this body that I carry. And what if I listen to what it's telling me? And part of listening goes back to adequate rest during my period. Because honestly, let's face it, I don't know about any of you, but unless I take Advil and pretend, it's what my body wants to do. And again, referring back to the other video, go have a listen, because I do talk about how in other cultures in the past, the days leading up to our period and the time during our period, especially the first day or two, has been identified in other cultures as a time when women kind of are at their most psychic, at their most, their powers of vision and of dream time are the strongest. And it has to do with our chemistry and our biology. So wow, what if we took advantage of that and just did a deep dive? So some of the things in the next video I'm going to be talking about, maybe you're not ready to do all of them. Maybe you're ready to take on one or a part of one. And I'll talk more about how you can kind of do this incrementally. But I encourage you to ponder this notion of being able to do everything a man can do on their terms versus we're still equal. We still can do everything they can do, but maybe it looks different for us. All right, so that's the end of the first half of my period care segment. Stay tuned for the next video where I talk about the nuts and bolts of how to follow proper period care.